Welcome to the SIWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SIWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier podcast. We're here with one of our new guest hosts, Lisa Pfau, and she comes to us with a background in writing and kind of helping people find their purpose and potential, similar to me, but more on kind of the writing lens. So, Lisa, if you can let folks know kind of what you're doing now, and then we'll get back to what you were like as a kid. So, what are you up to these days?
Sure. So I have a small writing coaching business. And we do a few different things. We mostly work with like high school, university, graduate students, helping them to improve their academic writing skills and also just how to navigate the institution and communicate with teachers and access resources and that kind of stuff. And then also kind of what to do after school. I remember when I was in high school and I was going to do a degree in political science, and it's like, why are you going to do that? You're not going to get a job, right? So I work with liberal arts students, and that's a pretty common thing. What are you going to do with an English degree?
Sure.
So also part of what we do is help coach students, like if they want to go on and do further education, what's that process? Or what kind of careers can they get? How do they communicate these skills that they learned in their liberal arts degree to a professional position? Because there's really no professional position for someone with that degree.
For sure.
And then also sometimes my students come back and I do professional coaching with them, say they're in the job and they want to improve their communication skills. So everything I do is around communication in different areas to different audiences, right? So teacher, professor, employer, admissions committee, boss. And I truly believe to be a good writer or presenter, communicator, you have to be you have to have creative skills and technical skills. So a lot of people, especially if they're coming from a different linguistic background, they focus a lot on the technical aspects of writing.
Okay.
And they do their grammar right and stuff, and that's great. But to be a good communicator, you want to have the foundation, but you need to know, okay, what does this audience want? How do I communicate this idea to this audience? You'll see I'm babbling on, but for my last point, but for instance, I find really good teachers or professors are the ones that have multiple assignments. So they'll have like a research paper, a Twitter post, a blog post, and students might think, well, why am I doing that's easy, man, take this guy's course.
Sure.
But actually what they're doing is they're trying to get you to learn how to communicate complex ideas in different mediums to different audiences, right? So someone reading a research article is very different than someone reading a tweet.
Sure.
So that's a lot of what I do, translating, synthesizing information so that people can understand it.
Yeah. So helping people become better communicators and hopefully improving themselves in the process. So I'd love if we kind of went back in time and listened to what was Lisa like as a kid. So growing up, what was kind of the earliest, fondest memory that you remember? And then kind of we'll walk through the progression until kind of current day. So what was Lisa like growing up? Were you shy, introverted? I mean, typical writers are like kind of bookish and in the corner just reading, or was there a different origin story?
Yeah, well, you know what? I hated reading.
Interesting.
I hated reading. I was a very slow reader. I liked math.
Okay.
And I didn't really get into reading until maybe grade 11 or 12. And then I really got into it. I'm like reading Dostoevsky and like these deep books.
Wow.
But I found reading painful. I also found writing painful. When I was a little kid, I used to write short stories and I won like a short story contest and stuff like that. But when it came to like assignments, I really found it painful because I would think so like, you got to get this perfect sentence and Fortunately, my dad is a very good writer. He's a retired lawyer, and when he even in high school, he had stuff published in Maclean's magazine and stuff.
Okay.
Very funny guy. And so he would sort of coach me through the process. So he's kind of impatient. So what he would do is he would just write the sentence.
Okay.
He started, and then you would learn, and then I'd sort of learn and from, okay, this is how we started it and whatever. And over time it became less and less painful, and I would just kind of do it. And it kind of helped that I know my dad's going to check it.
Okay.
Check it, he's going to rewrite it, he's going to comment on this. And so through that process, I got more confidence. And the best compliment I ever got from my dad was, "Did you actually write this?" So, I mean, that's what I was like as a child writer. There's a lot of other things I did as a child. I wasn't just sitting around like writing. I was more like, swimming, climbing trees. I grew up in the country. So, exploring, playing with, I had a very, very happy childhood and lots of make-believe, dress up, crafts, that kind of stuff.
Cool. What were some of the major influences along the way? So obviously your dad from a writing perspective, where, I mean, without his encouragement, you probably wouldn't be doing what you're doing now. But I don't know whether
He was more of the old school critical guy.
Sure, fair enough. Fair enough. A little bit more militant in his means and stuff like that. But the fact that I mean, maybe the means justifies the end or something like that. I don't know, but
I mean, that was his way of encouraging.
Sure.
It's from a different era.
What about some of the other influences? So you mentioned that you're climbing trees, make believe, and all that sort of stuff. So you mentioned that there's a lot of creativity in writing. So I'm guessing the make believe had a lot to in terms of influences on that side as well. And you mentioned that you won some like writing contests as well. Like what was do you recall like what you were thinking about when you were writing those stories?
That one I think was like a kite turned into a bald eagle.
Okay.
A story that one, I don't know what I was thinking about. The eagle was, I think, named after my cousin.
Okay.
So maybe I like missed my cousins. I think I really liked magic and stuff.
Okay.
Magic and mysteries. I still love murder mysteries. When I was in grade 6, I wrote a story about our kitchen was getting renovated, and I had read a book, and I wrote about some sort of crime, and I wrote this story that the contractors were like, putting drugs in behind the cabinet. I can't remember, my parents read the story and they were just like a little alarmed, like, oh, what's happening? I said, no, this is it's from a book. The contractors aren't doing anything weird during the day.
Yeah, this is just fiction. It's not a documentary about what's happening in our kitchen right now. So.
But I guess I got inspired by what's in the real world, and like a bald eagle, a kite, and then turn it into something else, or contractors in the kitchen. And I'm not like that fanciful compared to some creative types who create entire, like I was never into Tolkien, Lord of the Rings and stuff like that.
Cool.
Who are my sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent. Influences, well, I guess like I'm gonna go back to my parents. Like my mom, she's really the more kind of, here's a dress up box, go play make believe, go outside, climb up a tree. Like she really was, because she grew up in northern Manitoba, and they literally used to run around barefoot in the bush.
Okay.
So she thought it's really important, you get outside and you like explore stuff. And maybe both my parents. So like I think we were exposed to a lot of things, and even though we lived in a small town of 2,000 people, it wasn't like a big transition to move to the city and stuff, because our parents we traveled around, we saw different things. We like I remember once as a kid driving down the streets of Edmonton. This might be an inappropriate story, but or East Hastings of Vancouver or something. And my dad actually pointing out and saying, okay, that's a prostitute, and going around the block and showing us that's a prostitute. And why is that? Because, you know, if you see like a movie like Pretty Woman, it kind of glamorizes what it means to be out there on the street. But this is the actual reality. And like same thing, East Hastings in Vancouver, there's a lot of drugs and poverty and stuff.
Right.
And he would drive us up there. So a lot of this, like, you know, I had a very safe, secure, happy childhood, but I was also exposed to these things in the world that are not happy. So I think I'm like kind of realistic about things, but at the same time optimistic. So I guess my parents, I can't think of a lot of teachers and stuff too, but
no, I think that the parents tend to be the most influential in most people's lives. So it sounds like that you definitely didn't have that sheltered life where things were kept from you, but at the same time, you felt safe and encouraged to kind of be yourself and explore. I'd love if you dove into kind of that grade 11, 12. So you didn't like books. Your dad was kind of like cracking the whip and saying, do this, do that, whatever. And then it sounded like for one reason or another, you started liking it and you loved it. Like, so when did that happen? How did that happen? And how did you kind of start picking up these books that most kids wouldn't be reading on their own? How did that transition happen, especially if you didn't like it before?
Well, I think it was grade 7 or grade 9. One of my junior high teachers, she said, okay, you have to read 10 pages a day.
Okay.
The reason I didn't like reading is because I was like so slow at it.
Okay.
And so through this exercise of reading 10 pages a day, it became like not as daunting. You know, you have like 200 pages and it's like, oh my God, I can't read this. You know, you read one page and you're like, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that. Also, I didn't grow up. I was not encouraged to grow up fast. So I was like reading Robert Munsch, you know, all the way into like grade 6. Robert Munsch is a kid's book. I have like a whole bunch of them. I was not into like novels and, you know, playing with dolls and whatever. So I think I wasn't like, oh, I have to read these important books. And maybe something happened. Like, I mean, you go through puberty, you mature. And I think maybe like my interests changed.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, you know, these children's stories are not that interesting. And I start thinking about like bigger questions. So Russian literature, like, wow, a lot of pain and suffering. And I don't know if maybe as a teenager, you're I was like, I didn't go do crazy stuff. I didn't go out like partying or whatever. So I was not learning about pain and suffering and broken hearts and whatever from life. So I was kind of fascinated maybe by it in books.
Sounds good. So you kind of picked it up to kind of live vicariously through the different characters in the different books and saying, okay, well, like my family is pretty safe and secure. We don't have all this craziness, and it just kind of intrigued you for that. So so now you're reading all of these different books, learning about a whole bunch of different cast of characters.
All over my house, right?
Okay.
Go and like get these books. We had a lot of books, so that's the other thing.
So proximity just made it easy, where I guess your parents kept a lot of them around, so it's just made it convenient. And then you decide to pick like poli-sci, political science. So what does that transition, or how does that decision get made? Was it pretty straightforward? Was it supportive with your parents that they wanted you to take it, or was there kind of like a lot of guesswork involved? What was that process like?
Well, from a young child, I was kind of a weird kid.
Okay.
A lot of kids are. You know, like most kids have like posters of pop stars, and I don't know if they do now, but like on their door or whatever, like
sure.
Like I had posters of like prime ministers.
Okay.
So when I was 9, my dad, he was pretty active in politics, and so I got to go to the legislature to meet the premier at the time.
Oh, okay.
And our like legislative representative. I was 9. And that became a thing that my dad and I would do together.
Mhm.
My mom was not so into it. And so my dad would sort of bring me to all these different things. So I got very interested in politics, you know, partly to bond with my dad. And I had a really good memory. So I would memorize. I thought it was fun to memorize like countries, what. I would memorize all these things. And I think even as a kid, I was like pretty compassionate, and I saw this as a way to like change the world,
Okay.
you know? And I remember when I was 4 or 5, I woke up in the middle of the night and I realized, oh my God, we're all gonna die. I mean, I realized like people die. I remember that
Wow.
at 5, and being like, I don't know, sad, like, oh no, one day my parents aren't gonna be here. But I remember like my own existence, and I thought, I don't want to die. What can I do about that? And I literally sat there thinking these things through, and I thought, well, I have to do something important that gets recorded in history, and then that way, like I have to have some sort of legacy, and then this way, I'm not going to die. And so I literally, when I was a little kid, wanted to be prime minister. It hasn't happened yet.
Mhm.
And so I liked politics, sat down, filling out the applications. I said to my parents, well, what do you do if you like politics? Well, political science.
Sure.
And they both had political science degrees. And I remember asking my dad, what do you do if you want to be prime minister? He said, well, a lot of prime ministers are lawyers. Well, a lot of lawyers have political science degrees. So it seemed like a good plan. Now, I studied Canadian politics and Canadian history, and I thought, this is some boring stuff. and later went into like Chinese politics and stuff like that. That was more interesting. So
Cool.
my dreams of being prime minister changed. But I do have friends who work in the prime minister's office and stuff because I was all into that.
So talk to us about that decision. So you're in there, you have aspirations to become the next prime minister, and then you potentially take the lawyer route or whatever route to get there. You start taking these courses, and it's like, oh man, this stuff's boring, and I don't want to keep doing this forever. Like, what happens during that process? Like, how is some of the transitioning? Like, was it that the Chinese history you kind of navigated towards that and found like just more interesting ones, or and then what was kind of the thought process to say, okay, now what do I do? Like when I graduate, if I don't want to go into politics and do all this sort of stuff, like how is that decisioning process along the way?
Yeah, so I think there's a few different things. One, it was boring. And I think a lot of students and parents put these expectations on their kids. They sort of are focused a lot on the grades.
Mm-hmm.
They focus a lot on you need to do something to get a job, right?
Okay.
And so I think because both my parents have bachelor's degrees and they turned out fine. And I would hear stories of my dad just like, you know, doing this course. Not he was not like a responsible student. He and I think the other thing is when they would talk about school, they like enjoyed it, but they were not like, I don't know, they cared about grades, but they were not so focused on it. So I think what I'm trying to say is I went into university with the mentality of I'm going to learn things that I like. And if I learn things I like, I'll probably do well.
Right.
That's my philosophy. Not, oh, I'm going to take this course because it's supposed to be easy. Usually that's when it's not.
Right.
Because it's not fun.
Yeah.
And I think I also had different expectations going in. I forget, someone had told me, you know, you need to expect that going from high school to university, you're not gonna be the superstar anymore.
Sure.
Your grades are gonna change.
Yeah.
So, and I'm coming from a small town into the city, so I don't have these. I already have an expectation things are gonna be different. So I think, again, I'm not putting these expectations on myself, which then made me be able to choose what do I like. And so I liked history. I was taking a world history course, and I was really drawn to the Chinese history part. And
Hmm.
I'd always been kind of interested in that, even as a kid. And so I thought, okay, because I'm going to do what I like, I'm going to take a full Chinese history course.
Okay.
And then I got to know the professors, and the same thing, Chinese politics, and slowly like it shifted to that. And then the more I did that, see, here's what I think. You can have a plan, but really things happen organically.
Hmm.
If you just follow your interests and your passions, it's going to work out. Like, you don't know how, but it will.
Mhm.
And so keep doing the stuff. And, I get to my 4th year, and I'm working on my thesis, and my supervisor, he recommends a book to me. I go to the library. It's all in Chinese. I can't read this book.
Okay.
I switched supervisor. He wasn't the best supervisor, but that made me realize, okay, if I want to study this more, I need to get some language skills.
Okay.
And I signed up for one of the Chinese language classes. Now so I guess she's a big influence. That particular professor, I don't know why, she just really liked me. She just really thought, this kid has some sort of potential. She really loves this stuff. She's into it. And so she hooked me up with some scholarships and programs and whatever that helped me go abroad to China to learn Chinese. She just messaged me on WeChat the other day about her recent book. So she kind of, I'm from a small town, very shy, cried at summer camp. First month of university, cried every day. I'm not like a brave person, but her kind of encouragement made me go abroad. I went abroad to China several times, and that was like a life-changing experience because
Wow.
you can't speak the language, don't know anybody, don't know anything, and you just have to figure it out. And I think that just like makes you braver. So I kind of went on a roundabout way.
Yeah. No, I think that sounds amazing. Where, I mean, when someone kind of makes a bet on you and kind of encourages you, that can have a huge impact and influence. And from someone who's not brave to someone basically moving halfway across the world and immersing herself in the culture, that can be quite an interesting experience. So talk to us a little bit about like afterwards. So you ended up doing a master's as well, from what I understand. And then what is the journey to kind of where you are now? Because like, you obviously weren't going the political route unless you were going to land in Chinese politics or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I did do an internship at the Canadian Embassy in Beijing. I thought I was
okay. Okay.
But I didn't do the political route. Over time, I just realized I'm not a backstabber. I'm not into politics. I don't know if youth politics is much more ruthless than. But let me tell you, I knew Patrick Brown when he was 19, and when he did some stuff here in Ontario, I wasn't surprised. So, I don't know. It's just my core value is integrity, and I felt like at the time I couldn't do that and have integrity. Now, maybe if I'm older and retired, and I want to be a local representative, I probably would have the strong sense of self enough to operate in politics and have integrity and still navigate it. But when I was 20 something and a shy, kind of sensitive kid, I didn't understand like what is up with all this game playing and stuff. So that's why I got into that. But yeah, so why did I go off to grad school? So what's interesting is like there's certain things you do, you just go off and do. Like I went to this talk about why go to grad school when I was an undergrad.
Okay.
I wasn't thinking of going to grad school. I just went to this talk. And I remember someone asked the student, well, why did you go to grad school? And she said, I just knew I wanted to learn more about this topic.
Okay.
And for some reason, this stuck in my mind, right? So I was in China and learning Chinese, really enjoying it, thinking, what do I want to do next? Right? And I had applied for that internship at the Canadian Embassy in Beijing. I didn't get it. I thought I'm going to go into government or something, right? Because I political science. And for some reason, that person's, what they said came up in my mind. And I realized I want to learn more about China, Chinese politics. Like, I read all about it in books. I've been here for a year. I want to like really, you know, delve into some sort of topic. Now I have the language skills. I'm going to apply to grad schools. Funny story, even my references said, you're not going to get into U of T.
Okay.
He said that, right? My undergraduate advisor said, I don't think you can learn Chinese. It took me like a long time to learn French. How are you going to learn Chinese? Well, I mean, I don't have great Chinese, but in 1 year I went from 0 to like advanced Chinese. I could read things, write things, talk to people, survive. So it's possible. So where am I going with this? I mean, I think this all comes down to like trusting your gut.
Okay.
There literally were just when I'm really like just calm, I kind of know what I want to do. And then once I know, I don't know if other people have this experience, like this kind of knowing. And I think a lot of times where people are telling you what you should do, right? Society's telling you, your parents are telling you, the teacher's telling you, whatever, social media is telling you, you need to do this. But if you, I don't know, ever since I was a kid or what, there's just this kind of quiet voice that's like, I want to do this. And then of course there's another voice, that's crazy to do.
Yeah.
Voice is like, no, I'm going to do this. So even people say, I don't think you're going to get in there. You can't do this. I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I don't care. Write the reference letter. I'm going to give it a try. And so and then I ended up here. And weirdly enough, when I was 7, I remember I told someone, I'm going to go to university for 12 years because I thought university was 12 years because the rest of school is 12 years, right? I thought next step, of course, you know, it's 12. I have been in school almost 12, and forever now because that's what I do.
Yep.
But, and also I wanted to live in Toronto. I don't know why, ever since I was a little kid. And so I ended up here. And then, just again, followed what I naturally did. So I was always helping people. I, again, liked writing. It took me a long time to realize that could be a job, you know, because I had this idea, you need to be a professor or a teacher. What I'm doing is not a real job because there's no job title for what I'm doing.
Sure.
And then the other thing I thought mistakenly is that, well, work should be hard and painful. Like if this is a worthwhile pursuit, it should hurt. But I was like, well, I would do this for free. I like this too much. This can't be a job. This is not what a job is about. And then there's another, I forget who said this quote, but there's that quote that says, you know, something about, I can't remember the exact words, but the gist of it is that, you know, figure out what you love to do and then figure out how to make money from it.
Okay. So
I just kind of figured that out, and I'm still trying to figure it out. So again, everything comes down to like listening to that inner voice. And the more you listen to the inner voice, the more smoothly things will go. Like things are always going to happen. Things are going to blow up everywhere. You know, especially you know this if you're an entrepreneur. Like, oh, this happens. You're dealing with people. This problem. You know, but I think if you listen to your inner voice, you can be calm in the midst of these things blowing up. And then you can still go on the path, like avoiding the landmines, fixing up some stuff, and like get to where you want to go. And I think a lot of people, the first thing blows up and then they run off.
Yeah.
No, it's too scary. And we've all done that.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where a lot of folks that I connect with, especially the young ones, I mean, they're out of touch with that inner voice because there's too many influences outside where people are telling them what to do, and like society, social media, their friends, and all that sort of stuff, where too many folks don't take the time to actually listen. And as a coach, like a lot of folks, they already know the answer. They already know what to do.
Yeah.
It's just they often have too many like those other crazy voices that are saying stuff that get in the way. So I think that's amazing. And would love to get into a little bit about kind of how you decide to transition full time into kind of your role, because obviously this is not a job and not something that you're supposed to have fun with and enjoy doing and all that sort of stuff. So that's obviously counter to a lot of what's out there in terms of like work. Uh, what was kind of that decision point that says, you know what, I can do this full time. I can just go all in. I don't have to be doing these other things as well. Or was there a moment when that happened?
I don't think it was a moment. I think it was a process.
Okay.
So I was scared. Like, so what happened is, I finished graduate school. I worked as a research coordinator at the university. I, as I said, did the internship at the embassy in Beijing. I did these different things. And at that moment, I kept thinking, why don't I know what I want to do? And I think what I learned is you figure out what you want to do by figuring out what you don't want to do.
Mm.
And this is something I tell young people all the time. So there were things about those different jobs I liked. I like academia, but I don't want to be an academic. I liked the international part of being at the embassy, So I think I kind of went off on a tangent, but there's different things I liked, and I really valued freedom. I knew one of my key values is freedom, which is why I thought I want to go into academia. There's more freedom, right? Compared to working in the government, say. And I know I like ideas, so I need to be somewhere with ideas. But I was really scared. In the back of my mind, I thought, because I got laid off from my job at the university. Okay, maybe I'll do my own thing. I'll start a business. But that was so scary, And so what I did is I, at the time, had a partner. We ended up getting married. He was going to graduate school in the States to do his MBA. So instead of dealing with the fear, I put all my energy on his goals because that was safer. Now, incidentally, the marriage didn't work because you have to have two individuals coming together, right? Not a caretaker of someone else, and then you become like their parent. And then what happened is when that broke down and I had to come back to Toronto, literally with 2 suitcases, I literally lost everything. The universe was like, listen, you're not listening. You lost your inner voice. We're going to wipe out everything so you can hear it. And I remember literally, there's nothing to lose. It's gone. So I had no job. I had, the savings had gone to the MBA. I did negotiate some spousal support. I literally had nowhere to live. And I all my furniture, I couldn't move it back from the States, too expensive. So just my life in 2 suitcases, and my books I sent to my parents in Alberta for storage. Weird thing happened. Within a month of returning, my previous roommate, so the person I lived with before I got married, her roommate gave her notice, and I moved back into the exact same apartment and bedroom I lived in before I got married and moved to the States. And it was literally a do-over. And I was walking down the street of Bathurst. And there's one point you can go to the subway station, which would take you down to the university, or you can go the other way and go to this apartment I lived in with my ex-husband. And I stood on that corner, and as the light was changing, I was like, I get it. You're trying to tell me last time you went this way and it didn't work out. And this time you need to go this way. Right. You know this way to try it.
Yeah.
So I said to myself, I think then I was like 31. And I thought for some reason I shouldn't go back to school any later than 35. I don't know why. So I thought, in order to go back to school at 35, I would have to apply for school at 34. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to just try this for 3 years. I'm going to go down this path for 3 years. If at the end of 3 years, it doesn't work out, I'm going to try option B, right? And so those 3 years were hard. And there were many times I wanted to quit. But because I somehow gave myself this arbitrary like deadline,
Right.
commitment, I went through all those obstacles and bumps. And by the end of 3 years, I could support myself on my business and it became real. And so all those insecurities and doubt, it kind of forced me to work through all those insecurities and doubts, since I couldn't just run away, right? And then once it became real, then it was a job. And still to this day, my mom will sometimes be like, well, why don't you get a job? And I'm like, Mom, I have a job.
I just work for myself. Yeah.
So just because and I say, you wouldn't choose this life, but I've chosen it. So, get your head around it. So yeah, I think it's a lot of factors. Getting back in touch with the inner voice and structures, accountability, something. So you can't just quit on your dream. Because I think people, when you start something, it's exciting, it's new, but then it starts getting hard. And that's when people quit. And it's always hard. It's always hard. But the only thing that happens is that, first of all, you don't fear the problems as much, because you just accept there's going to be problems. You don't take the problem personally, right? There's just going to be a problem. And I think over time, as you overcome problems, you also start to get some sort of joy or excitement over solving problems.
Sure.
Nobody likes to get a problem, but because your confidence grows, at least my mindset changed, where it's like, oh, problem. I'm going to cry in the corner. Now I'm like, okay, a problem. Is this a problem or is this an opportunity for growth?
For sure. Yeah.
And that's just how I see it. And I know, okay, it's not going to be fun. It's like starting writing an essay. First 15, 20 minutes, pain.
Yeah.
But once you get into it, you get into the flow, you learn something, and at the end, you have something better. And then along comes another problem. And, same thing. And that's life.
Yeah, I like to refer to them as puzzles instead of problems, because it's just something that it has a solution. You just haven't figured out what it is yet. And with a little bit of persistence and a bit of luck sometimes, then you can definitely get that. So I'd love if we kind of recap and kind of close out the interview with a little bit of your SWIKE. So you talked about the stuff I wish I knew earlier. Definitely follow the inner voice and pay attention, listen to it, go left versus right, that sort of thing. Sometimes the universe tells you what to do, and if you don't listen, it'll come back and tell you to listen again even harder. Yeah. You mentioned also structure and accountability. So kind of the 3 years, the deadline, and pushing forward past kind of discomfort, and then treating those problems as opportunities. I think that's a great mindset to have. But is there another one or two that you'd want to share with folks, or with young Lisa at maybe a couple of turbulent times in her life that you'd want to share with her? What is some of that SWIKE you'd share with your younger self?
Yeah, I think I was always an overachiever. I'm still an overachiever. There are a lot of overachievers out there.
Okay.
And the thing about overachievers is that we're always trying to get to some sort of goal. And we're really focused on outcomes.
Okay.
Like grades, whatever, promotions, whatever. And so I think letting go of outcomes, because that outcomes create expectations, which create anxiety.
Right.
And when you're anxious, you can't really live to your full potential. And it makes the process of doing things painful as opposed to fun. So I think let go of outcomes, and then knowing it's all going to work out. It's not going to work out in the way I thought. It's not going to work out in the timeline I expect, but it will somehow work out. And often it works out better than you expected. Like, yeah, you get something better. So I think those two more things.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. What I took from that is as you mentioned, a lot of people focus on the outcomes, but I encourage folks to take a look at like process goals. Like, what are you learning in the process, right? The quote, Lisa, about the journey, not the destination, because you could study hard, you could learn all these things or whatever, but still not pass the course or not get the grade that you want. But as long as you have that learning and can take that with you, then you can grow and evolve, which I think is the better lesson than a mark or a grade or promotion or this and that. And then on the second item about it'll all work out. I think it's a lot of it is you interpreting things and making it work out, because a lot of people are focused on making the right decision. Whereas I encourage folks to make the decision right. Like the situation, you can't go back in time and change it anyway. So you might as well make the most of this experience and then figure out how to make it the right decision anyway. So that's a couple of things I took up. But thanks, Lisa, for sharing your story. And I'm sure there'll be more conversations to be had, probably a deeper dive in NEN or all of these things that we talked about. But what are some of the future aspirations we can look forward to hearing about you undertaking? And where can people connect with you and find out a little bit more about you?
Yeah, so I'm like, should I share this on the podcast? So I run my own business. I'm a woman running her own business. I'm doing this all by myself, no partner. So my future aspirations aren't really business related, but I'm trying to have my own family.
Okay.
And find a way to run my business while being a single mom.
Okay.
And that's happening this January 2022. So
cool.
Fingers crossed. So I think that's my current aspiration, is figuring out how to be a good potential parent and leader. And as a result of that, trying to change the way I do things to give more responsibility and stuff to other people so that I can sort of step back. And it has been hard with COVID because, especially I feel like right now the economy is being hit more than during COVID, at least in my sector. So yeah, because I think as a business person, it's hard to let go of control. Like, this is literally your child. Like, so
you already have a family, your business, and now you're starting a second family.
Trying to step back and trying to have a more balanced life that, I love my work, but there's other parts of life. So that's my aspiration. And I guess tied to that is what I said about like letting go and maybe just being more like in the moment, like moment to moment, like being really present. And where can you find out about me? Well, I think the best way is to go to the website www.pfau.ca, and Pfau is P as in Peter, F as in Frank, AU. And there's links to our social media, our podcast, which Luki has been a guest on, I think, 2 years ago?
Something around there, yeah.
And he talks about career stuff because that's kind of what you're into at the time. What else? Yeah, I think that's it. Send me an email.
Sounds good. All the information will be linked in the show notes. And thanks so much, Lisa, for sharing your insights and your goals and kind of that journey along the way. So hopefully everybody takes a listen to their inner voice later on. Just take a moment of silence and mindfulness and just kind of connect with yourself. And it might not happen right away, but eventually you'll hear it calling out. And if not, the universe might tell you anyway, whether you like it or not, as you experience. But thanks so much for sharing your story, Lisa, and hopefully we'll have you back for a future episode.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was my pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Lukidanu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.